Hey there, you're welcome here again to another insightful moment on my YouTube channel. If you're new here, this is Prep with Chigozie, a page specifically designed to help you to not just pass the sometimes elusive verbal section of digital SAT, but pass that section in flying colors just so you gain admission and preferably scholarships into that university of your choice in the UK, in US, or in Canada. So today we're going to be discussing another interesting topic under the reading based section of the test. Now this is one of such topics I've always talked about, one of such topics that do not require you to read so much. In fact, you find that if you read so much on this topic, you get more confused, because I often say it, the SAT is out to get you. They introduce a lot of unnecessary elements, non-essential information, just so you are tricked into choosing the wrong answer every time. And I am here to help you surmount that obstacle, right? So yes, we're looking at the command of evidence question, the evidence-based question type under the reading section of the test. Now, this evidence-based question type comes in two forms. If you've been taking practice before now, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Typically, the question would often come as you see on my screen right now, which choice, if true, best illustrates the author's hypothesis? Which choice, if true, best illustrates the student's claim? Which choice, if true, best justifies the researcher's hypothesis? And the likes. And you can have it in another form, which choice, if true, contradicts the claim. So as we delve deeper into the topic today, you're going to know what the difference is between illustrating a claim and contradicting a claim. So anyhow, the question comes in two forms. Like I was saying earlier, the question comes in the form that only presents to you a text, right, and the answer choices. Now this is the kind I'm going to be focusing on entirely today. You have just the text and the answer choices, and there is the other kind that comes with a graph or chart or just any image at all. You're justifying claim or contradicting claim still on this other type, but then your answer has to be well represented on the image or chart you are giving alongside the text. Now, what are you going to be learning in today's video? You're going to be learning 4 steps, no longer 5 steps, because this is pretty easy question if you just know if you just know the trick behind it, right? And I'm here, of course, to teach you this trick. It has just 4 steps. In the first place, you have to be careful about reading the question. Read the question so that you know whether you're supposed to be contradicting a claim or supporting the claim. Now, because we tend to have more questions asking you to illustrate the claim, students tend to overlook when a question just pops up, especially on the second module, asking for a contradiction. So they already have the preconceived notion that the question often requires support for a claim. Contradiction type doesn't always come, and students go on through the test not remembering that question could just pop up. So we're going to look at both types, yes, and like I said earlier, the first step is just to ensure what the question is asking you to do. Secondly, you're going to learn how to identify the claim. How to identify the claim. Identify the claim is the easiest thing to do. It is the easiest thing to do, and you're going to learn just how to do that in today's video. And number 3, you're going to learn how to break down claims, how to break down sentences that are claims into clauses that you can better understand. And finally, you're going to learn how to make logical predictions, right? How to make assumptions about what illustration of a claim could be and what contradiction of a claim could be. So you want to stay here, get your writing pads. We'll be taking a walk through a sample question just to illustrate the steps previously mentioned, right? Yes, so we have the question showing right on your screen right now. Remember, the first step, be sure what the question is asking you to do. So the question we have here is simply asking that we support a student's claim. Which statement, if true, so there's one way you're sure that this is an evidence-based question, if true, right, would most directly support the student's claim. So now down to that very important detail on how to get the claim in the text. Now the claim in the text is often either in any of these two locations. It is either in the introductory sentence or in the concluding sentence. So if you want to scan your text quickly for the claim, you know where to go to: the introductory sentence or the concluding sentence. On very rare occurrence would you find it in the middle of the text. So for this question now, I know just where to go to get the claim. I couldn't see it in the introduction. I can see it just right there, the concluding sentence. You can see the student has said that the explanatory notes were included in the republication primarily as a marketing device to help sell the standalone volume. Now, for a question like this, whose claim is as clear as daylight as this, you don't need to read so much. The temptation to read so much is always there, but then there is a trap that comes with it. You read so much and you lose sight of the claim because your answer is simply supposed to look like an example to prove a claim, right? Now we'll give you a very typical instance to justify what I mean by a claim and what the example does, right? So let's say I make a claim that a certain man is a thief. That is a claim to justify that a certain man is a thief look like. It will sound like this. It won't necessarily repeat the exact words used in the claim. It is supposed to be evidential, right? So it will sound like, oh, he walked into a certain room, a certain dark room, preferably. He looked left and right. For anybody watching, he picked up an item and dashed out of the room immediately. Now, can you see how much more illustrative of the act of stealing this is? He got into a dark room, he was careful that nobody was watching, he picked up an item and dashed out immediately. Now you see, that is what an illustration should typically sound like. It justifies to break it down, which is the next step I introduced to you earlier. Explanatory notes. It's detailed notes, probably giving details about this publication. And we are told that these notes were included as a marketing device. So you must also know what a marketing device is. To, of course, drive sales, to drive people to like the publication, to buy the publication. Now, there are two parts of this claim, right? It's not pretty obvious, but there are two parts of this claim. I'm going to take some time dissecting this because sometimes students just take one part of the claim and there is always that answer there that is waiting for you. That would be very obvious here is the idea of marketing device. You would find an answer that just plays to that alone without mentioning anything that has to do with explanatory notes. So you see, so the answer has to talk about explanatory notes and the marketing intention behind explanatory notes. So be sure to get all parts of the claim. Now we have gotten that explanatory notes were included in the publication to drive marketing, to drive sales. Now, to deal with the option, right? And another very tricky kind of option is the option that does the direct opposite. So obviously this question is asking us to support a claim. Expect answers that do the opposite. Expect an answer that sounds like this. For example, the footnote presented in the publication discouraged audience or discouraged prospective buyers from purchasing the publication. So you see that it turns the text, it turns the claim around. It gives you the direct opposite. It does what? It contradicts. Because the SAT knows that you know that the question comes in two forms, the contradiction and then the supporting part, they would often throw in that option that just does the direct opposite to what the question asks for. So you have to be careful of such options. I think that is the other very tight option to look out for. Now let's go right into the options, knowing these important details, right? Option A said the text of the poem as published in the quarterly journal is not identical to the text of the poem published in the standalone journal. This is making an unnecessary comparison. And I am quite sure you'll find this detail about standalone journal and quarterly journal in the beginning. So if you read too much, in fact, to be sure, let's look whether we see that from the beginning we have a student is examining a long, challenging poem that was initially published in a quarterly journal without explanatory notes, that then later republished in a standalone volume containing only that poem that an accompanying explanatory notes written by the poet. Now you see what I'm talking about. They are playing on your inability to capture what is important and introducing this option. So this option says nothing that we can align with the claim. It talks about the resemblance or the non-resemblance between the quarterly and the standalone journal. Many critics believe that the poet's explanatory notes, I'm saying a strange information here by the way, critics, but we'll move on, notes remove certain ambiguities of the poem and make it less interesting as a result. So I warned against this answer, right? That the poet's explanatory notes remove certain ambiguities of the poem and make it less interesting as a result. Now, making the poem less interesting means that people will not be encouraged to get the poem, which is the direct opposite. So if the question had asked us to oppose the claim, this would have been the perfect answer. So see, another trap answer. We've seen why it is wrong because you were informed of that earlier. So it goes off. The next one, option C, the publishers of the standalone volume requested the explanatory notes from the poets in order to make the book attractive to readers who already had a copy of the poem in a journal issue. So of course we see both parts of the claim illustrated here. The explanatory notes, remember the claim said that the notes were meant to be a marketing device. So many critics that the publishers of the standalone volume requested the explanatory notes from the poets in order to make the book attractive. And those details we see in the claim makes a lot of sense. Make the book more attractive, in other words, a marketing device. D, so we're holding on to this until we see something, but I've told you don't be tempted towards just choosing an answer that you don't consider others. Consider others too and be sure that they don't do the job better than the one you're holding on to. D, correspondence between the poet and the publisher reveals that the poet's explanatory notes went through several drafts. Now this focuses on just explanatory notes. The drafting of the explanatory notes has certainly nothing to do with marketing. So we see this is also off. So we're left with our best answer, option C. Down to taking a walk through the second question in today's lesson, as I promised earlier. Now this question is asking us to do the direct opposite of what we did the previous time, right? Before you were asked to support, this one is asking you to undermine. Now if you didn't know, the word undermine means to contradict, to weaken, to oppose. So you can either have words like undermine, contradict, oppose, call to question, or cast doubt upon. These are the different words or phrases that indicate to do what? To contradict the claim. Whereas words like support, illustrate, justify, underscore, right, are asking you to do what? Do the opposite, support the claim. Now, how do we deal with this? We've gotten from the question already that we're supposed to undermine, and we're undermining what in particular? We're undermining Foster's hypothesis. So we want to go and look for Foster's hypothesis. As mentioned earlier, you can have that in the beginning or at the end. So I can see it right at the end. It is the very last sentence. Foster hypothesized that damage to eelgrass roots increases the plant's rate of sexual reproduction. This in turn boosts genetic diversity, which benefits the meadow's health overall. Now, for claims like this that has a lot of clauses. They prefer to break it down. They prefer to narrow it down to the subject and the main complement of the sentence, right? So further here hypothesize that damage to a grassroots. Damage to a grassroots is the focal idea, right? Increases the plant's sexual reproduction rates and down to benefiting the middle. So in other words, damage to a grassroots benefits the middles. Okay, so there you have it. I just streamlined that very complex sentence of the claim into a very simple sentence, right? So how did I do that? I focused on just the first and the last clause of the sentence. Damage to a grassroots benefits the middle's health, and that is easily digestible. Now the information we have in the middle are just the dovetailing towards the middle's health benefiting, right? So whether you get them out or not, I don't think they contribute so much to the claim. So to undermine the claim, I am thinking that my answer should sound something like this: damage to a grassroots does not benefit the middle's health. Grassroots. Now, there's another very important detail you must leave this video with today. It is the fact that on scientific passages like this, on experimental passages like this, you would often find that there is something in the claim that is related to something else mentioned earlier in the text. So you have to, for example, go and find out what contributes the damage. That there are certain times for which you need to read some more, but not so much, however. So we have damage to a grassroots, right? And I've mentioned that for passages like this, sometimes this damage could be caused by something else. This damage could have a relationship with something else. So you have to also figure out that thing. In case in the text, in the answer rather, we do not have damage. We do not have the word damage or synonyms of the word damage. We could have that other thing that has a relationship with damage of the ill grassroots. So let's read from the top now to clarify what else we can attach to the idea of damage to the ill grassroots. Now from the beginning we have, when digging for clams, their primary food, sea otters damage the roots of the eelgrass plants. So I think I have read enough now. I know what causes the damage now. It is the sea otters. So in the answer, we could be told that there is an expansive number of the sea otter, right, close to the middles, and the middles' health are doing badly because of the presence of sea otters. Mind you, the answer I just predicted right now does not have the word damage. Instead, it has the other thing that is related to damage, which is the sea authors, right? Now let's delve right into the option and find out which option ties closely to the prediction I just made for this question. Option A gives us, at some sites in the study, eelgrass meadows are found near otter population that are small and have only recently been introduced. Now we have the idea of otter population being small, so I'm thinking the smaller the number, the less damage it will possibly cause. And of course, the idea of damaging the health, affecting the health negatively, is not stated here. Nothing about the health of the meadows, in fact. So this is just one side. They're talking about the otter population responsible for the damage, and it even makes the otter population look very small, which it is easy to assume now that the smaller the number of the otter population, the less damage they can possibly cause. So this answer is both too specific, contradicting, and half complete. Option B, at several sites not included in the study, there are large, well-established sea otter population but no eelgrass meadows. Now, this mentions that there is large sea otter population, which you can start assuming already that, of course, the larger they are, the more damage they can possibly cause. But then, what do they cause damage to? We don't see. There is nothing about the health of the eelgrass. They just let us know. So we have to see that the health of the eelgrass are doing badly as a result of the well-established population of sea otters. So option B is only partly true. C, at several sites not included in the study, eelgrass meadows health correlates negatively with the length of residence and size of otter population. Perfectly what I'm looking for. Negative correlation simply with the health of the meadows simply means that the presence of the otter population affects the meadows health in a bad way. Now, you would often have phrases like this: negative correlation and positive correlation. You have to understand what that means for those that probably do not understand. When something is negatively correlated with something else, it means that one is growing or doing well, the other is doing bad as a result. Or yes, that is how we can have it for negative correlation. Then for positive correlation, there has to be that two things are related in such a way that they are mutually beneficial. So one is growing, the other is growing alongside. Option D: at some sites in the study, the health of the plants are unrelated to eelgrass. We don't want to say anything about the health of the plants unrelated. The plants where we are looking for are such that are related to the eelgrass. So our best answer is obviously option C. So there, if you find that lesson helpful, as I certainly believe you did, you want to just be generous enough to leave a subscribe, right? Especially if you're new to this channel, just so you're notified when I get to treat another topic, and make use of the comment section too, especially if you want me to treat any other topic. If there's a topic that is you're struggling with and you want me to discuss, I may just be generous enough to treat that topic in my next episode of this playlist. So just use the comment section to that effect, right? And I cannot mention enough how important it is for you to take practice. If you let these tips and tricks, right, they will not be very effective for you. They will not show if you don't practice them. So you practice with Khan Academy. There is a Blue Book app, and there is also my workbook, reading and writing workbook. I don't know how it is showing on your screen right now, but then you can get it on my site chigozieunwokoji.com in the description of this video right now. Just place your order and you have it delivered at your doorstep. The especially interesting thing about this workbook is the fact that the questions you have in them are a little more technical than regular, and I can't mention how important it is for you to take more difficult questions. It's important for you to practice with more difficult questions, just so if you find easy and mid-range questions on the day of the exam, you can just glide through them, and when you do have technical questions, you would also do just as well on them. Why? Because you got to practice with difficult questions during your training period. So you want to do that, gain access to the book. It is really affordable for the valuable information it has in it. Yes. So until we meet again in the next episode of this playlist, I hope that you practice as much as you can, and I wish you the very best on your test.